Before we dive into this episode, I just want to let you know if you want to get access to episodes before anybody else, head on over to patreon.com/concerts that made us. And as a bonus, you'll get access to videos of some of the episodes and a host of other benefits. We've also teamed up with Band Builder Academy to offer you 10% off their membership. Details of both can be found in the show notes below.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts, concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Morales from Aurora Dream, and you're listening to Concerts That Made Us.
Daniel, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you inviting me.
I'm looking forward to the chat we're going to have now. We opened the show with A New Infinite, which you released at the end of February. Would you like to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. So that track was something it's probably the most experimental stuff I made. I couldn't find a way to make it work for the upcoming Aurora Dream album, just because it had so much electronics and just a different production approach. I think that it just wouldn't match, but I still released it as a single. And initially, I wasn't planning on getting any features on it. I was just testing the grounds and just putting something out that was, I guess, more bold, for the lack of a better word. But then, I don't know. We had a section where I was thinking about playing the same thing again. It was a very long section, and that's very common with prog music, but I figured maybe inviting Pliny and Simon would make more sense, just because they are also very, very melodic, and the song was very melodic overall. And maybe because, I had Simon already mixing the track, it was easier to have him reach out to Pliny and then see if he wanted it, if he wanted to be on it. And that's how basically everything came about.
Yeah. I was, you saved me a question there. I was just going to ask you how you got the two guys on the record. But is it something you'd look towards going forward now, to have them maybe appear on more tracks?
Not on the album, since the album will have other features though. I already put out, I believe, like an image that I just give you everything, like the album title and all the features, just to kind of create some momentum, I guess. But I hope we can collaborate again, because that was a fun track, and I wasn't expecting it to do that well. I know maybe most people would, because it has some features, but I don't know. It was, like I said, it was a very bold move for me to make, since it's the first time that I'm trying to do something like math rock or prog with electronics. So I was just, didn't expect anything, but it's doing well. Like, people seem to enjoy that, and I'm glad Pliny, jumped in. And it's fun to hear how him and Simon kind of do the feature as a back and forth. Really, they throw riffs at each other, and it went well. I hope we can do something else in the future, hopefully.
Yeah. And the track marks a beginning of a new era for you. Can you tell us a bit more about what this new era is going to be like?
Yeah. So, for most people that know about the project, it only had one song back in 2016. And that's something I wrote back in my university days, and just put it out. I didn't even have a name for the project at the time. I think I released it under my name. And then it just stayed like that for years. And I didn't really, like I said, I didn't have like a name for the project. It was just like a solo thing I made. And then over the years, I started writing more music, and that's how I wrote the album. And I wrote a couple singles, but I didn't really know how to structure things for, I guess, a comeback for the project. And then, I came up with a name for the project, and then I didn't know which track to use as a comeback, really. And I did re-release that 2016 track, this time remixed and remastered. So that was kind of like a comeback, but it was still something not fully fresh, So so then I picked that one. I picked the New Infinite just because of the track name, and I don't know. It was also named like that because it really opened up for me. Like, I don't know. It showed me that there's a lot more I can do musically, not with all the different layers that I combined and everything. So it just made sense to have that track kind of like introduce the project towards a new direction. So I wouldn't say that it serves like really well as a sneak peek for the record, just because it's not as electronic, but at least it's a good track to I don't know, give people something new, and hopes that what comes next is also good.
Yeah, I get you. And something I'm dying to know is, as an instrumental musician, what does your creative process look like?
it's a strange thing because it's not just instrumental, but because it's prog music and math rock more specifically, it's um, well, it a lot of it relies on weird like time signature changes and like weird song structures that are a little bit more unusual than normal. Although this song, A New Infinite, that we were just talking about, has more of a pop structure, if you want to call it that, because it's 4/4. I think it's like 120 BPM, and it's very straightforward. Like it's somewhat predictable. But as for everything else, like the other 90% of the stuff I do, then that's when things get a little tricky. I try to, I guess, kind of follow a template that can at least give the track some foundation for the structure and not have things, because you can write a messy song, you can write something that is really messy and out there, but I think there will always be something underneath that kind of holds everything together. So for instance, I try to have an intro and an outro. I try to have at least like a section that kind of repeats sometimes, like a chorus maybe, and then you can get more creative from there. You can add as many verses as you like. Maybe you can add a bridge if you feel like it helps transitioning. But I think getting down the intro and the outro and the choruses are like the main thing I do, and then from there it's just uh, there's no limit. You can do whatever you want, but I think I still struggle with transitions between sections, whether it's verses or whatever, just because it's hard to know sometimes how to connect everything or have everything glued together. Um, and also, you listen to it so many times as you record things that you kind of forget that people that are not recording this will listen to it, and it doesn't always translate as well. So I'm still trying to learn like how to create smooth transitions when we're jumping from something really crazy to something a lot softer or things like that. That's when and also you got to remember that you're going to play this live, so that's another good thing to know.
Yeah.
And I kind of I don't know, I forgot about that like halfway in the record, and then now that I think about it, it's going to be kind of a challenge to learn the songs because you got to be able to also transition between sections, and it's but yeah, that's, I guess, getting the intros and the outros and the choruses are like the main thing, and then you go from there, you go beyond and do whatever.
And how do you approach getting your music noticed and getting it out there? I imagine it can be harder than, say, a more traditional musician who, works with lyrics and stuff like that. I mean, it would be more radio friendly. So how do you approach it?
Yeah, well, I think right now that's like the hardest part of the whole process of releasing this, all of these songs, and even the things that are still lined up to be released. It's still a big concern, just because there's only so much you can do independently. And I know, like, I'm well aware that it's a genre that it's also not, I mean, it does have a following, and you just need to know where to find that, and where are the outlets where you can get the most exposure out of it. But still, like, it's still a challenge. I'm doing what most people do independently. I think I'm putting it out using DistroKid as my distributor, and that's only one step. After that, I'm of course posting it on my socials and finding groups on Facebook where people, I don't know, listen to prog or math rock, or maybe bands that are similar. And I try to write something about it and just post it without making it seem too spammy, just because some people might see it that way. And I'm also using Reddit to share it like across metal rock blogs and stuff like that. Literally using everything, any tool that I have on my disposal, just to see what happens. But it's even doing all of that, it's kind of hard. And I know maybe most people would expect things to really blow up immediately just because I had Pliny, for example, on a new Infinite, but it's not quite like that all the time. Like I wish that was like the cheat code or something to make it go crazy and get a lot of plays, but it's not always like that. Yes, the feature sharing it might help, but ultimately, I think there's a lot of variables. So, as an independent artist, I would just suggest people to um, on the internet find the places where you can post that, or have like self promotion avenues where you can just uh, do your thing and save the links and use something visual that might capture people and drag them in. But um, yeah, I think that's what most people can do. And of course, if you can get some like a press agent or someone um, that can help you, email this to other people that might be interested in writing about or looking into that, that might help as well. I know a lot of people say that it's not that it's never guaranteed, and they don't see the point behind it, but it's always good. You will be surprised how many people might want to look into and write about that. So just yeah.
Yeah, and you made me think of something there while you were speaking. Quite a few musicians I speak to lately, especially, they're starting to go down the avenue of sync music. Is that something you'd be open to?
I've never thought of it, but I really like soundtracks from games and also TV series and anime, and it's it would be interesting to experiment and see if I could write something for yeah, one of those artistic mediums, especially gaming. I think that gaming has opened up more room for for guitar people, in my case, and other musicians to kind of jump in and write something that doesn't have to be necessarily metal, but just write something that fits the aesthetic of the game or the film. So I I don't know the reason why a lot of people are going that route. I'm sure there must be a lot of reasons, but I'll be interested. Like if I was invited, I would definitely consider it just because it's a different experience.
The first time a guest said it to me now, it kind of caught me off guard, but they were making out that that's where the future of music and the future of, as a creator, that's where the kind of constant revenue stream would be coming from, you know? So
Hmm.
maybe, might be something to look at in the future, you know? At this stage, we'll dive into your own history when it comes to music, give the listeners a sense of your influences and such. So, if you can you remember your earliest musical memory?
I think that, well, one of my really, really early musical memories was probably just paying attention to what was playing in the back for my, with the video games that I used to play, like on Nintendo 64 and things like that. I noticed that even though it was like 8-beat kind of music, it still felt nice to pay attention to it and not just kind of like let it play and not uh, pay too much attention, because it felt great. It I don't know. It made me want to get a keyboard and see if I could relearn those songs. And I did get a keyboard. And then when I got that, at that time, I was already meeting people that would listen to metal and Metallica and really a lot of bands that I don't quite listen to a lot these days. But I wanted to learn those metal songs using my keyboard. And then I guess from there, just meeting people that spent a lot of time on the internet, just finding out about bands and always trying to find like the weirdest and the most like underground thing, just because I don't know, maybe at the time as you're a kid, you want to be the one, you want to be like discovering all this music like nonstop. So that's kind of like how it started.
Did you grow up in a very musical household? Was it very supportive towards music?
Mm, not really. I mean, I think well, my mom, she used to buy records and listen to many different artists from many different genres. My dad, not really. He's more of a businessman, and he wanted me to do sports, and I tried a lot of sports. I think every single one that I can think of, but I would always, yeah, just jump to another one, and until I think he finally realized that I just wasn't into it, and that's when my mom got me a guitar, and then yeah, from there I started to, I guess, on my own, just trying to meet up with people that were also into playing guitar, or just, were into this kind of music. And but either way, that they're, in my house, they're very supportive of what I do. They don't necessarily understand it 100%. And I also don't spend the time like breaking everything down for them, but I do share it with them, and they yeah, they see that there is a lot to it, and they support it. So I think that's what matters.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And growing up then, what was your local music scene like?
So I was born in Venezuela. It's only now that I'm living here in the States, but over there, at the time, I think it was almost like the whole local scene was almost like split in two. We had the people that were extremely into the whole like metalcore movement that was happening back in the days, with bands like Bring Me the Horizon, and all that huge era that was fresh and brand new, and that was the thing. And then we also had, the people that were more, I guess, supportive or into like prog and Dream Theater and Opeth, and bands that were, I don't want to say more well, they're kind of more complex from a musical standpoint, but both both teams are good either way. Like, I also loved metalcore and stuff like that, but that's kind of like how it was. And at the time, yeah, you would hear a lot of people discovering Children of Bottom and Metallica and Megadeth and Protest the Hero, and bands that you may are not necessarily, at the time at least, that they were very like underground and starting out. And it surprises me now when I look back at it, that in a country that is not necessarily like so close to the US, and you wouldn't expect the culture to have that like drive to discover these bands that are almost, yeah, like starting out, that they would do it. It was crazy. At the time, I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, oh, cool. It's cool that my friends found out about this band. But yeah, it was mostly about the people that were into the metalcore movement, and also people that were into more like prog, I guess, but very diverse, which is unexpected from, at least from my country. I think.
Yeah. And as a concert goer then, from concerts you've attended, what concerts would you say have made you?
I've attended a lot, not in my country, but right after I moved here, I attended a lot of concerts that I always wanted to go. I think going to Metallica like in 2009 was like one of the experiences that I, at the time, because I was a kid, it really made me consider writing my own stuff a little more. Just, I don't know, it gave me more of a push. But more recently, I think, after attended so many concerts, seeing Buckethead, who's big influence for me instrumentally, at least, or seeing Dream Theater, or seeing Porcupine Tree, and bands like that have a very it's like their shows is not just them playing. There's a lot going on visually, and there's a lot to the whole show that also made me, I don't know, want to get better at guitar. And then seeing newer bands like Polyphia and John and people that are doing something, similar to what I do, I guess, that seeing their age and how they were doing all these things also like inspired me to not overthink so much about it and just do it. But I think, if I would have to mention like 4 concerts that were very like influential, I think Porcupine Tree, Dream Theater, Metallica back in the day, and then I think Buckethead. Yeah, those.
Some good ones. And what makes a good show for you then? What do you look for, and what's the deciding factor on whether you're going to go and get the tickets?
Well, there's a lot to it, I think, because after attending so many shows, I realized that there's some shows that I find better than others. A lot of the times is because of the songs that they'll be performing. Really, like I would say like 70% or like 65% is because of that. I don't really like when a band plays an entire record from start to end, like whatever their last record was, just because it's I don't know, it's hard. Maybe it's also a subjective thing. I would like them. I like when bands kind of have more of a diverse set list. As for the visual things, the visual stuff going on, of course, that always makes it more interesting. It's, for example, I don't know, bands like Bring Me the Horizon, I can see how much they spend on their visuals, and it creates more of a Disney World experience, I guess, because you get all these things happening as they're playing, and it makes things, it gives like a deeper layer to the whole experience. But I think most of it, for me at least, relies on what songs they're playing, and sometimes the bands that are opening for that final band, because if the openers are also bands that I enjoy, then chances are it's probably really really good show. But yeah, it's mostly that, I would say.
Yeah. And for any listeners that haven't caught one of your shows, what can they expect?
Well, for now, I just finally got a drummer and a bassist. So for the newer shows, they can expect seeing a full band, because I used to just for the previous shows, it used to be just me using backing tracks, and you can only do so much with that. There's a point that you reach where it just doesn't translate as well to people. Not that they would stop going and see you play, but it's only now that I can finally perform the songs with an actual band. So I think that'll be new to them and for me as well, just because I haven't done it. But they can expect that for sure, and they can expect also me playing A New Infinite, also a couple of songs from the record that's coming up, and visually I'll try my best to get something together that at least adds that extra layer to the experience. But I'm still trying to figure that out. Just like my live rig, I'm still like going through Sweetwater, seeing what might work best, and just trying to have the budget for that as well. I'm even thinking about just reaching out to some guitar techs and seeing how if they can help me figure out what it is that I need. But as for shows, I think that's what they can expect. I would love to do a tour like across the US, but I think I'll start locally, or at least covering Florida first, maybe an album release show or something, and then from there we'll see. I think that's the goal.
And out of all the gigs you've played then, is there an experience that you kind of revisit in your head as maybe the perfect gig so far?
So I think in 2019, there was a show I played, and it was very improvised because I was just going there to see some friends perform. It was a very like a 3 lineup thing that happened in Miami here. So I just went there, and I knew some of the guys, and at the time, I had shown them, the first single I put out in 2016, and I was just getting done with writing another track. I still didn't have a name for my project. Aurora Dream wasn't a thing, but one of the bands canceled, and yeah, they just needed to have someone else like open up or do something to kind of like fill in the gap. And they one of the guys had the backing tracks of those 2 tracks that I had shown them, because he was helping me record in a studio, so he had that handy. And he asked me to perform those 2 tracks that the only track that I could play really. And I played those, and it went really nice. I didn't really have any like audio issues at all, and because there was already an audience, they were very happy about those songs, because it wasn't necessarily like a math rock show. It was more like a pop punk surfy thing, and it was very alien to them seeing like those 2 songs being performed. And I had to come up with a name, because they whoever was hosting the event needed to have that like on file for whatever reason. And I remember that Aurora Dream was one of the names that I was thinking for a song. It was never really used for a song, but I just gave that as kind of like a placeholder for the night. And then I just kept it just because, I don't know, it sounded great, and it's a good show. That's the last one I think that that I kind of revisit, like you said.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most interesting stories about coming up with the name of your project that I've heard. You're right though, it has a very nice ring to it. And I always say you have to have some bad with the good to realize how good the good is. So is there a gig that you would say is maybe the worst experience you've had, and how did you overcome it?
So back in high school in my country, I was always trying to find a show or like an excuse to perform my music, even if it was a cover or something. And my school, it had like a theater, so I played there, like I believe like 2 songs or something, and it was really hard to hear what I was doing. And of course, I was a kid at the time, and it's not like I had a lot of idea, like, it's not like I knew exactly what I was doing either. I was just trying to play the right notes. But audio wise, it was very muddy, and it was like so much. It's almost like if I had, I don't know, the most insane amount of reverb that you can ever imagine. And on top of that, the people were not as, back in the day in my high school, most people wouldn't listen to rock and metal or anything like that. So I was already expecting a lot of backlash, or just them not happy with that, or just people already like prepared to, just say the worst things you can ever imagine, just because they are, they looked at it as something very, dirty and not worth listening. Like, I guess like most people, when, I don't know, I think back in the day, or maybe my country's culture, it wasn't, even though there was a scene, yes, that's not necessarily the majority. So it was kind of like going in the ocean with full of sharks, really. Like I already knew that only my friends would clap, and it was it wasn't the best experience, but I did perform the songs well, at least. And after that, I didn't want to play in school again. I wanted to find shows where people that were seeking that music would go to, and that made more sense, of course.
what's your pre-show and post-show ritual? How do you get yourself psyched up for the gig, and then afterwards, how do you wind down?
That's a good question. And for me, I would do a lot of warm up guitar exercises with my fingers, of course, and trying to play. Um, I think Big Sur Moon by Buckethead, just because you have to stretch your fingers a lot. So I would do that in different speeds just because it always helped. Because of what I do requires a lot of tapping, I realized that I knew that I always needed to warm up, because there was a time where I wouldn't do it, and it caused like a lot of tension with my hands and pain, and it was um I would always do that. And also I would get there like to the venue a lot earlier and have um you know run things a couple times, just because not really because I was fearful that something might go wrong, like if I had to troubleshoot something, but because it would give me a better sense of what the place looks like and the people that are there. So I would feel less anxious by the time I had to perform. And I'll also, there's a lot to it that is, there's a lot to this then that happens like from home, even like before you go to the venue. I try not to, I don't know, beat myself up too much about like little tiny mistakes doing the craziness and like the whole tapping thing, because sometimes like I haven't had a show where I feel like I play all the right notes. Sometimes I mess up and people don't notice it because I don't know, maybe they just, it's really hard to notice, but I do. And back in when I first started playing, I would get home and feel really bad because I knew that I messed up, and even though nobody noticed. So now I try not to think about it too much. After the shows, though, now I get why bands are only thinking about putting their stuff back in their van or whatever, just because timing wise, you gotta be quick for the next band to get on stage. But also, I don't know, it's a good thing to kind of like set yourself free from all the year and just put everything back in place. I like to get a beer or like get a drink after a show and go to whatever is the coldest place in the venue, just because I'm probably already sweaty. So that's number one for sure. And I don't know, talking to people helps too.
For finding gigs and playing gigs, how does America compare to your home country?
Well, in my country was it's not like I played a lot of gigs in my city, at least. I there were very small events happening and not many people hosting things. So I can only remember like 2 or 3 local shows back in my country, and that doesn't include Metallica because that was a very big show, and it took months to organize and everything. But as far as like small like local shows and gigs, I can only remember like 3 maybe. And it's like I said, it's because we didn't have as many, like the community wasn't as big, and we didn't have as many people with professional gear or like the places to like organize this. And I know you can always throw a house show, but even that, like, it was strange not to have those. I can only remember like 3. But here in the US, it's a lot different. I wasn't expecting it to be that different, at least here in Miami, just because it's something very. It's a city that, even though it's big, there isn't a lot. At least like 4 years ago, it was the whole like metal scene and rock scene was very. There wasn't a lot going on. It was really hard to find people like hosting events and kind of like bringing together the local bands and having them perform. But now it's different. There's a huge scene. surprisingly. There is a lot of people hosting events, and they get sold out, and there you can see a lot of people going there. There's a big deathcore scene that I don't know how it happened, but now it's a thing. And as far as like prog music and like instrumentals and math frog, it's still very small.
Mm.
But the people that go to these events like that to see deathcore bands or other genres, they are also, of course, like supportive and open to see like an instrumental band perform or like a prog band perform. I think they're even more receptive just because it's something very unusual here. So because it's so rare, it also drags a lot of people in just because there's not a lot of it. So that's kind of like how it goes.
Yeah. And when it comes to your career then, how do you measure success?
I think that for success, I try to think more of I don't know, when I think about success with music, I try to think of my vision being met, trying to put out something that I feel like it was very close to how I heard things in my head and how I envisioned them to be. Even though you never really finish a track, you kind of like just stop working on it, but you get pretty close, right, to your vision. And that I try to look at that as, the track being a success. Because if you start attaching that to like plays or whether or not it got I don't know, the recognition you thought it would get or something, it can be it can do more harm than good. It's because it's very unexpected. There's a lot you can't control with music, especially if you're putting it out independently. So I try to just keep it very simple and try to put something out that felt like it was what I wanted it to be. And then whatever happens after that is, if it's well received and like very well shared or not as much, it's going to be like an extra thing. And that way it's, I don't know, you can go about things I don't want to say more lightly, but more more stress free and happily without having to expect too much in return. Now if it does really well, then like I said, that's great, that's an extra. But even now, like with all these features, I don't attach to the release like too many expectations. I would say that I'm not even expecting like the features themselves to like share this, because sometimes it doesn't happen, and I'm not saying there's a strong reason behind like, oh, they didn't share this, they didn't like it. It can be a million reasons, but even with those small things, I'm not like expecting them to do that. Like if they do that, that's amazing, that helps me a lot. Same with people that want to add my songs to like playlists. But I just try to do the homework of putting it out and just sharing it, and that's it. After that, I just try to think about what I can do next. It's a very subjective thing, but I think I don't know, it's healthy for me at least.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. If you get too bogged down with expectations and the numbers especially, it can start to affect your mental health very negatively.
Yeah, it could start to make you not as excited to keep on putting things out. So it's, as selfish as it sounds, I try to look at it like, oh, I'm doing this because I liked it and I'm putting it out. And if people want to share it, then good. It's it just makes things easier, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And before we dive into the last couple of questions then, what are your future plans? Tell us all about the album and gigs, whatever you have planned.
So, as for the album, it's coming out next week on the 22nd, and it's a good album. It took like 4 years to make. It doesn't have to take that long, but it was only me, and I had to do all like online and remotely, and find someone to play drums for it. Um, Pliny's drummer is the guy who played drums for the entire album, and it's great. I had a friend from university who wrote bass for it and recorded bass for it as well, and it's a great album. It has 9 tracks. The first one and the last one are kind of short because it's like an intro and outro for the record, but everything else is like 3-5 minutes. There's a 7 minutes song that is super long, but it's great, and it's a fun record. You I hope that people can find something in it that resonates, because not all the songs are the same. More some are a lot heavier than others, and you get a little bit of everything. It still feels very Aurora Dream. It still feels like what I put out in 2016 in a way, but there's a lot more to it. And one of the things that added like an extra layer to the whole experience was getting Eric from The Contortionist, who plays keys and synths for that band, and he with his keys and synths, it added like more depth to it, and that makes it sound a little more interesting, I think. Same with having Randy's production, who also does production for like Periphery and like all their bands, that you can also feel like there's more to it than just guitars, because there's a lot going on behind the instruments. So that's, when it comes to the record, it's a good album. All the features are, they're great, and it was worth the wait for sure. I know most people would say that about their own records, but if there was a lot of detail put into this, especially with mixing. I'm surprised that Simon was patient enough to like work on all the feedback that I would give him. And I mean, it makes sense because it's my first record, so I guess it's normal to be so picky about it. But now, like I said, it's there's no such thing as like a perfect album. So we just try to take it to, as make it as perfect as we possibly could. But it's great. It's fun. As for everything else, like shows or gigs or tours, I'll try to do some shows locally. Hopefully an album release show when I rehearse with my band and we know exactly which songs we're playing, but that's definitely happening. I'm also working on shirts. This album will be pressed in vinyl, CDs. I'm also having someone work on music tabs so that people can buy the tabs for guitar, bass, drums for the entire album, and also for A New Infinite and another single that comes right after the album. And that will be like the last thing for a while at least. But there's also something else being made that has to do with the album. It's like an alternative version of the album. Something very unusual not from instrumental bands, but from bands in general. But that's also in the making. And I think that's it. Well, people can go online to the website and see that the merch shows us coming soon, because like I said, I'm still working on shirts, at least one design, because I mean, to be fully honest, it's hard to like cover all of it yourself. It was already a lot by paying for all, the album and the production and everything, and now paying for the vinyls and the CDs and the shirts and the stickers and the flyers. It can get pricey, especially adding also hiring someone to do all the music tabs, because I don't know, I don't write my music like using Guitar Pro, and then I don't know music theory really. Like I know how to tune my guitar and I kind of know some chord shapes, but it's not like I can transcribe all my stuff. So I also had to pay someone for that. But people can expect that, in a couple weeks, not weeks, but like during this second half of the year, I think that's where people will be able to, buy the shirts. And but yeah, the album is coming up next week. Then after the album, you'll get another Aurora Dream single. And then after that, like an alternative version of the record that, I don't know, it's like a remake electronic of the album, and I think it's fun. It's an interesting twist.
Plenty of stuff to look forward to. So, and we'll dive into the last couple of questions. So, if you could see any performer from history in concert for one night only, who would it be?
That's a good question. I think that I would see. I would like to see Children of Bottom, and I know it's very, very far away from what I play, but since the singer died, it was very bummer for me, because I never had a chance to see them live. And of course, like, I don't know if they're still performing or if they have like a new singer, but that band was the only one that I missed out on, at least, like, seeing them live. I'm glad that everybody else I listened to is still alive and well, but yeah, if I could go back in time, even in my country days, I would really try hard to see them, because I know they went there at some point. But yeah, I think that one for sure.
Be a good gig. And the next one, so if you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Oh man, that's a good one. I think I think maybe Guthrie Govan, the guitarist, just because I used to listen to a lot of his stuff, and there's so many questions I have. There's so many questions like I want to ask about his writing and how he comes up with this weird riffs, and how his brain works when it comes to writing all this craziness, because it's very unusual to see him like in like music events like NAMM, or I just haven't seen him. It's just like Buckethead. You don't just see him somewhere. It's very rare. So I would probably pick one of them, or yeah, just to ask questions. Because they're instrumental. It worked kind of similar, so it's I think that could help me like understand a lot more things. So that those two for sure.
Right. And the final one, so what song would appear on the soundtrack to your life?
That's a really tough question, I think. There's a lot of good and bad, and it's hard to pick a song that has just one mood. But if I had to go with one, I would probably go with one Dream Theater song, just because they're super long. They have so many mood swings across the entire thing. I think I would say The Count of Tuscany by Dream Theater, just because it's really well. I don't know, it's a really cool song. It feels like a movie almost, because it takes you on a really long journey. It's like 17 minutes or something. I can't remember, but really cool track.
Perfect. Listen, Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure now. I've really enjoyed getting some insights into your music. Thanks a million.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I like this.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up to Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here. Bye.